My name is Vic, and I'm a graduate student at the MIT Media Lab. And I want to talk to you about a new interface that we're working on. Prior to coming to the Media Lab, I was working at Magic Leap, working on their augmented reality wearable headset, where I was sort of part of the hardware and optics team. And one of the frustrations I've had in this space of AR, VR is that even though we see content generated in front of us, we don't really have a great way of interacting with that content. We still use controllers like these to be able to manipulate what we see in front of us. Even in video games or even like PowerPoint presentations like here, what if we can create a more immersive way to see the content and visualize what we see before us? This is our team. We're a bunch of students here and essentially want to create our own operating system that would allow us to essentially create a gestural interface for this large-scale display. And so I want to thank my advisors, Mike Bove and John Underkoffler. They've been instrumental in sort of helping craft and advise this interface, and John's been really instrumental in that field for a long time. He was actually the creator of the Minority Report interface a long time ago. So if you look at sci-fi, right, we see Minority Report where Tom Cruise kind of swipes across the screen. He also sort of rotates his hand to kind of control content that he sees. And on the right side, you have actually, in America's Got Talent, there was a demonstration of an individual sort of in VR playing with content, moving it over to the corner of the screen and selecting his options. Now, we see this in sort of sci-fi, and we want to sort of make this a reality for not just for visualization purposes and for collaborative purposes. And so we sort of envision this AI that kind of responds to the user's gestures and voice input. And essentially, imagine this interface that you see in front of you, and it kind of responds to your user's input. You can ask what you can ask from it. You can also move content around using your hands. And so right now, for this infrastructure, we're building in core sort of gestural platforms. And just like you have a keyboard or a mouse, imagine like a swipe or like a air tap or a rotate gesture to basically manipulate the content you see in front of you. And also, we're also implementing some voice inputs as well to be able to control more fine the detail that you want to see. And so what we see this going forward is, for huge office spaces that where you can sort of visualize the content and see and manipulate what you see in front of you, as well as for autonomous vehicles where the entire windshield becomes a display for you. And we see sort of this interface being part of that display. And lastly, I think for media browsing, like if you want to share content via photos, apps, videos, and YouTube and stuff like that, you can sort of show your friends, on a large screen display, kind of moving your hands around. And so let's see if I can get something to work while we're here. All right, so this is sort of an interface. So I'm not touching anything at all. So using just my hands, I can sort of exit the screen. And you can see here, I can sort of go to different applications on the screen. And it tracks my hands. So like essentially the fingers are mapped to like UI elements. And as I move around, you can sort of select different options. So right now, we're looking at sort of developing photos and videos and maps and games and other voice assistant inside this application. Now, the goal is that we want to create sort of something immersive for the user. So where I can sort of come up in front of you and essentially move around and show you like what the latest photos were that I took from like the July 4th Independence Day party or something like that. And so essentially, we want to create this foundation layer for new experiences for large-scale displays. And so I think given that, I think I wanted to also share sort of this is another video that I've taken in our research where we essentially, you can see here as we go highlight over in each individual apps, you can select different kinds of options and essentially the photos enlarge as you hover over each photo. And so we imagine sort of an interface that as you select icons using like gestural inputs, you can imagine kind of moving around and kind of selecting your options and share some visualizations to the user. We also have sort of YouTube applications where you can directly share your videos and stuff via this application. And so essentially this summer, we've been sort of utilizing the Play Labs as a launch pad for us to demonstrate this sort of operating system for gestural feedback. And we're currently building these applications into this interface and demonstrating why people would use them for certain office collaboration environments. And lastly, we want to install this prototype in large screens that we see today. Like in the Media Lab, for example, there's a lot of large screens. And if we can sort of display content in a more interactive way, I think it would be something that's really playful to have for the users and for anyone who's interested in learning more about technologies. And so that's pretty much it, and I just want to share something about that. And I think there's a lot of work to be done in this space of interaction and storytelling, and I think there's a lot of movement happening in this gestural interface work. Thank you.